Hi, this is Dennis Horrigan with Connecticut Wealth Management, and I'm here today again with Kevin Leahy, President and CEO of Connecticut Wealth Management. And we are admittedly a little bit stir crazy, but what we want to talk with you about today is kind of a review of the CARES Act, what that means for individuals and for businesses, and also talk about some opportunities for financial planning, ways to make, lemonade out of the lemons that the coronavirus has been giving everybody. So real briefly, want to go through some of the aspects of this new CARES Act that was approved, a week and a half ago now in Congress. There were two major parts of the CARES Act that we want to review with you. The first part was for individuals. The second part was more for small businesses. There are a lot of complexities. We're not going to go into all of them. We really just wanted to point out the ones that we think are the most important to the folks that watch that are watching these videos. And the aspects of the CARES Act that apply to individuals were things like the direct payment that folks are going to be receiving. You probably have read an awful lot about this, but folks should be looking to be receiving checks. Actually, not checks. They should be direct deposits to your bank accounts, hopefully pretty soon. The next few weeks is what they're aiming for. We're talking about checks on the amount of about $1,200 for individuals, $2,400 for couples, and an additional $500 per child that is 17 and under, that is a dependent. Again, there are a whole lot of details that go into that. That's broadly the plan there. There are some other parts to the CARES Act that we think are pretty beneficial for individuals and families. One of them, of course, is the fact that unemployment, they've added how much unemployment will pay. You can get $600 more per month than you could before the CARES Act. And they've extended the benefit period by 13 weeks. So pretty significant change to the unemployment program. And another one we're going to talk a little bit more about, but the changes to retirement plans, most specifically is changes to the required minimum distribution, which is something that folks that are over age 70 and a half, now age 72 have been dealing with. I don't know, Kevin, if you want to talk a little bit about that and how we've been coaching clients through that change.
Yeah, for sure. First, Dennis, it's wonderful to see you. For anyone who has the good fortune of being Dennis's partner, to be away from him for 2 full weeks is really, really difficult. So it's wonderful to see him. So as far as required minimum distributions go, really the elimination of the need to do that for 2020, I think the benefit is fairly obvious to many. It allows people to delay selling securities, right? Usually what happens is most people have their IRAs, 401ks, whatever their retirement accounts or however they're housed, invested in bonds and stocks, maybe in CDs. But in the case of people that have it in stocks and maybe even some more aggressive bonds, if they're way down, certainly you don't want to be forced to sell. So I think that's part of the beauty of this. And so in most cases, we're suggesting to clients that, and in fact, helping them not to have their distributions made. There might be some rare occurrences, right? Especially as the year goes along, where we find perhaps a market recovery, perhaps a client who's been conservative inside their IRA that's not forced to sell something that's down, and who might otherwise be in a really low tax bracket this year. So as usual, it's, facts and circumstances are going to be different for everybody, but certainly those that want to take distributions can always do it at the very end of the year. So when in doubt, our suggestion is to delay.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about tax rates now and what they are now, what they might be into the future. But of course, that's a big benefit is you can suspend taking those required minimum distributions this year. You can reduce your what you would otherwise have to take for realized ordinary income. The second big part of the CARES Act, which I refer to as the business part of it, but I think it's actually just as much about individuals as anything. But it's the part that is for small business. It's directed to small business owners. Especially this program called the Paycheck Protection Program. We've spoken about that. We had Jay Sattler did a great job. Joe Brennan did a great job talking about those programs. I don't know if you want to touch on those, Kevin, and how what our clients have been seeing when they've gone to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program.
Yeah. So again, interesting topic, and for those that went through this process last week, those know that it was a little crazy, right? This has really been a monumental undertaking, right? From Congress approving this to the process of moving it along to the Treasury and ultimately through the banks, the underlying details of which I certainly don't know. Most of us don't. But I was talking to somebody who's fairly high up at a reasonably good sized bank, and I said, am I wrong in thinking that this is kind of like Black Friday, but instead of for retailers, for banks, and banks have never done it before. They're not staffed up necessarily to have been prepared for this. And oh, by the way, they just found out about it the other day, and the details, literally, they were getting the final details right at 8 or 9 o'clock the night before they were supposed to be open for business to take applications 9 o'clock the next morning. So a massive undertaking. The bad news, it seems like for those that went through it, it was a little bit difficult. It was a little bit of a challenge to understand what all the details were, whether you include certain retirement benefits and whether you include healthcare benefits in the payroll and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, my reaction was somehow people took a process that in ordinary times would have taken weeks and months and so forth, and just got it done. Whether they did it themselves, whether they used their accountants and attorneys and folks like us, it was really, really pretty neat. And
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes, right? We'll see. The next step is actually seeing how the administration works and how the money gets dispersed. But part one, at least in process, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned that's it's kind of like the loan program is really designed to help individuals, right? The whole idea is to try to get cash into the hands of people that, because of the coronavirus, because we've asked people to close down their businesses and not work, they don't have any income. This is a way to get cash into their hands so that they can afford to pay their rent, afford to pay if you're a business owner, you pay their employees, put cash in the employees' hands. But the whole thing, this is, I guess, round 3 of a relief package. It's massive. It's huge. And I for one, am impressed with, I guess, the willingness and the ability of the powers that be to enact legislation and to get the Treasury and the Federal Reserve and Congress all on board trying to find relief for these so many people that have been affected by this. And I think, Friday was a difficult day. I know for the banks and I know for business owners that were trying to apply. But most people got it done, and I think the banks are figuring it out as they go. And it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be good. So I think we need to show a little bit of patience.
Without a doubt. And I'm sure in retrospect, right, at the end of the day, we'll all look back and we'll say, geez, this should have been done this way and that should have been done that way. And maybe these organizations shouldn't have received aid. But in order, I think everybody agrees that in order to make something significant happen quickly, it had to be done broadly, and even the forms for those who went through it was even with the difficulty that some of us had in understanding some of the details. It was an amazingly simplistic form, as it should have been, right? And so I hope that with history behind us one day, we'll still remember the point of looking back and trying to, as you say, Dennis, really, in many ways, this is an extension of unemployment, right? It's keeping businesses alive for sure, but it's also really making sure that paychecks continue to get to people. So I think we probably beat that one enough, at least for the moment.
Yeah. So we have said many times in the past, don't let the pursuit of perfection be the enemy of progress. And I think that probably applies in this case. So the other things that we wanted to talk about were some planning opportunities, some opportunities to do some planning financial planning and people's individual lives, things that they can do to try to, as I said at the top, try to make lemonade out of the lemons that you've been given. And I know there were a few that we wanted to touch on today. Kevin, I don't know if you want to talk about a couple of these.
Yeah, well, I mean, the most simple one that hopefully most people have been jumping on is, so-called tax loss harvesting, which seems to be a overly complicated way of just saying selling your losers, in a taxable account. Get some tax benefit from if you have securities that have gone down. Most of us do, right? And in times like this, eventually we'll have gains again, right? And we will pay taxes on those gains. But if you can sell your losers now and put those tax losses in your back pocket, you can carry them forward, whether it's through the rest of this year or even beyond. That's a really, really simple thing to do, right? Even if you're investing back in something that's reasonably similar, there are some caveats there that you need to be careful of, so you don't run afoul of the so-called wash rules. We'll save that topic for another day.
This is probably where we're supposed to say, please consult your tax advisor.
Yeah. And then the other, if we're kind of climbing the ladder of complexity here, from tax loss harvesting to Roth conversion. So if you just think, real big picture, why would anybody want a Roth IRA, right? Why would anybody want to convert a regular IRA to a Roth IRA? Well, the idea of a Roth IRA, as most of us know, is that inside of the Roth IRA, there are no taxes paid, not on ordinary income, not on capital gains. And so if one can take assets and allow them to grow and to earn income to some future point when one is actually going to be in a different tax bracket, then one might want to consider deferring taxes from today. So if you have an asset and it's down quite a bit now, maybe it's down 25%, maybe it's down 30%, maybe it's down 35%. If you were able to pay taxes on that asset today, put it into a Roth IRA and allow it to grow back, maybe even just to where it was before, those assets will escape future tax. So, that is a tactic for typically someone with, liquid assets to pay taxes now, and someone that is reasonably confident, in where their tax rates will be today versus where their tax rates will be down the line.
We talked about that before, Kevin, too, that also might be more applicable today than maybe even a year ago, because a lot of folks' income this year, their income might be lower than they would have otherwise expected it to be. So if folks are in a situation in 2020 where their income is lower than they expected, you also have a situation where income tax rates right now are very, very low. Historically, they're very, very low. And if you think about all of the relief that the federal government has been providing, at some point, all this debt that they're incurring, they're going to need to somehow raise some revenue to pay that off, which might result in higher income tax rates down the road. I'm not predicting that will happen, but there's a very good chance that tax rates will be higher down the road than they are today. So does it make sense to convert that IRA today into a low tax rate environment, and then further down the road you may have a higher income tax rate? It's a good idea, and it makes sense for a whole lot of people.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think, Dennis, I'll maybe double down on what you said. It's hard to imagine that with all of the benefits, I'll say, that we're receiving, right, and the debt that the country is incurring, that we're not, and this isn't meant to be negative, it's meant to be the reality, right? How do we pay those things back? How are we going to pay back the debt that we're now incurring to keep the economy alive and to help people that need help? It's for people to pay higher taxes, especially probably the so-called wealthy, right? Those that earn a reasonable amount of assets. So it's likely to be a much higher tax environment off into the future, and make a Roth IRA that much more valuable.
Yeah. So the third idea that we had as it relates to individuals is a little bit more complex, and that is estate freezing. So for folks that have large estates that may be facing the prospects of having to pay an estate tax when the second spouse passes away, there are some things that you can do today to take advantage of this lousy market and low interest rates that can help you avoid some estate taxes down the road. You want to talk about that?
Absolutely. So again, the concept is really very much the same, right? Is if assets are, and again, the easy one is to talk about publicly traded stocks. So if you have large cap or mid cap or small cap stocks, you're very likely down somewhere between 25 and 30, 35%. Let's say assets are down a third in value. If you otherwise have what you perceive off into the future to be a taxable estate, an estate at your passing will pay estate taxes, right? The goal will be to reduce your estate, so you don't pay estate taxes, or you pay less in estate taxes. So the idea that you can remove an asset now at a discounted value. So the easiest example, easy math, would be if an asset's down a third, right? So let's say it used to be $1.5 million, and now it's worth $1 million, and you gift that million outside of your estate, whether it's to your children, whether it's to a trust. These are topics for another day, but you move it outside of your estate, and it just goes back to where it was before, right? It goes back to $1.5 million. That is $500,000 that is going to grow outside of the estate, not be taxable to the either federally or to the state. So again, a wonderful time to engage in estate planning, but frankly, it's really difficult for people to do. Even the wealthiest folks around have a hard time oftentimes giving assets away, even in the family, when they feel unsettled, when they've seen asset values go down, but can be wildly effective.
Yeah, all of these, I think all of these planning ideas, they kind of have this almost like a blanket over them of emotion. And I think that's what you see awful lot is emotion sometimes can get in the way of logic, especially when you're dealing with such a stressful time as we're dealing with right now. What we're trying to do for our clients is to try to look through these things logically and make some sense as to what people are facing today and what they may be facing in the future, and try to unemotionally make good decisions. So the idea of this whole video series is to try to provide some advice for people, some ideas, some things to think about, and we are open to any requests for help. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We are happy to help, as I said. And we'd love to talk with someone other than my dog or my wife and children, because I'm about to lose my mind, and it's close. It's very close. Anything else, Kevin?
No, again, in the order of planning opportunities, just harvest those losses that you can. Consider your tax rates, and again, if it's likely that you're going to be in a higher tax bracket in a future year, or said another way, you're going to be in a particularly low tax bracket this year, maybe because income is down, really look long and hard about a Roth conversion. And then if you're at a point where estate planning, estate taxes are an issue, absolutely think long and hard about whether or not gifting makes sense. The details around how that's done is a whole separate discussion and can be done in a number of different ways. But the first step is really to consider doing it. And you will very, very likely look back, as we always do, and say, boy, oh boy, I wish I had made, to Dennis's point in the beginning, I wish I had made a big tall glass of lemonade out of those lemons.
All right. Awesome. All right. Thank you. That's about it. Hey, I do want to let folks know we're going to do a few more of these videos. We are going to be speaking with some folks about mindfulness in the next coming days, next couple of days. We're going to be talking about a whole bunch of things. But the idea is to keep them kind of short, kind of quick. If you have any questions, you need anything from us, please don't hesitate to reach out. And stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks for watching and listening. Have a good day.
Bye.